something. Welcome back to Elevate and Illuminate, the Empowerment Podcast. We are in season 4. This is episode number 2, and I'm excited about this conversation. It was good to break ground last week on season 4, get the conversation started with Lester Young from Path to Redemption. We had a wonderful conversation. I thought it was a wonderful way to start the season. And with tonight's conversation, this is going to pick up where we left off last week, and we're going to keep this momentum going. As you know, season 4 is focused on statewide reentry services, highlighting the people, partnerships, and systems that help individuals successfully transition from incarceration back into our community. Because reentry isn't just about coming home, it's about access to opportunity, employment, training, financial empowerment, and the support systems that help people rebuild stability and dignity. Tonight, we're joined by a representative from the Indianapolis Urban League, an organization with a long legacy of advancing economic opportunity and strengthening workforce pathways in our community. We're going to talk about how their work connects to reentry and what it takes to create real access to opportunity for returning citizens. Let's elevate, let's illuminate, and let's get into the conversation. Again, welcome everybody to episode 2 of season 4. Keep in mind that the chat room is open. So any questions that you may have for me, our guests this evening, feel free to put them in the chat, and feel free to commune within the chat. Get to know who's in there. Maybe even network. And if the question is asked and we haven't gotten to it yet, and you know the answer, hit the chat room and enlighten your the fellow listeners. Um, so with that, I'm gonna hand the floor to you, allow you to introduce yourself to everybody. So the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. My name is Bianca Phillips. I am the Director of Family Services at the Indianapolis Urban League. My organization is awesome. And I know a lot of times people say, what is it about? What do you guys do? I am going to ask, please look at our website, which is www.indplsul.org. It's abbreviated Indianapolis and then U for urban and L for league. So you remember it that way, .org. But I'd like to, if anything, talk to you all about some of the things that people don't see that we um, do on a regular basis that really impact our community. So, Jamarcus, I don't know if you want to just jump into, the event today, if that's okay with you. I mean, I feel like they'll
Absolutely.
learn about me a little more in this thing. Actually, let me say that. Let me start off by saying, I myself am justice impacted. A lot of times people who are justice impacted, don't know it, don't want to say it, because of stigma. Um, but I've noticed that the more that I'm able to, tell the story about being justice impacted, and being oh, different layers, stigma, layers of, mental health issues, of everything, right?
Right.
That kind of goes with that. Employment, housing, right? So the Indianapolis Urban League um, was the place that I got my start. I went through their New Beginnings program, which is the 2-week job readiness program, back in March of 2018. They knew my background. Um, and I'll just say it, 20 felonies, right? Like most people, like 20 felonies, and it's like, yes. Related to substance abuse due to endometriosis. It's just what it is.
Mhm.
Um, but the Urban League actually gave me my start because they knew that my background was customer service. And I have been applying for these customer service jobs, right, and getting denied. And unfortunately, a lot of the barriers that people experience when they come out of incarceration is getting, just someone to take a chance on them, and you having to do those jobs that nobody else really wants to do in order to kinda get to what you need to get to. Um, but Urban League, oh, and I'll just side note, Jamarcus, when the Urban League had speed interviews, a lot of the people that had customer service positions wanted to interview me. So, someone who is just as impacted, I'm upfront, I tell them that.
Mhm.
And they're like, "Oh, we'll just go through the process," right? Because there's no filter on it anymore. Before, when people didn't want to hire you because you had a conviction, they were just upfront about it. And then, unfortunately, now that it's been put on the back end, it just kind of prolongs the issues of, not having employment for a period of time. And, just all of the time, that kind of goes into being lost when you could try to be productive.
Right.
But anyway, Urban League, like I said, I kept, getting turned down, and they said, "Well, we're gonna start this customer service call center training program. If you can kind of get it up and going, we'll see, what you got." I did. I went full time in 2019 as project coordinator. Um, over all kinds of events, involved in all kinds of programming. Community-based organization, is where it's been. Passion for justice impacted people. Um, Went to Indigo for a little bit, in HR with somebody with, 20 felonies you would never think could do that. But some time has passed since mine have just before anybody asks. There's been a lot of time that has been, when was it? I was incarcerated from 2013 to 2014. So convictions, probation ended 2017. So it's been about 9 years since I've been off everything. And I think in North Carolina right now, where my convictions, are my charges, I want to say it's a 20-year thing. So we're just gonna see what happens. Maybe
Mm.
2037. Um, but it's a conversational piece, at least, to start off with, somebody who understands what it's like to have to put in the work and want to make sure that the people who really do, want to make it work, we find
Right.
ways, to help. Um, and that's just what it is. So, with that being said, Jamarcus, do you want to tell everybody about how you were a vendor at the Indianapolis and Deborah's Place in Harrison Ford? Um, Eviction and expungement workshop. I'm sorry, eviction and expungement resource fair today. Please tell us all about your experience.
So with iron sharpens iron, our slogan is we are stronger together. Um, so, resource fairs, really any kind of event involving reentry, like I'm all in. So, when I got the flyer that the resource fair was going on today, I was all in. It was just a matter of who was going to accompany me or if I was going to be by myself. So definitely showed up, excited about the day. And it was a wonderful turnout, especially considering that we had rain all day today. And the participants were standing outside in the rain, like waiting for the doors to open. So at the sight of that, I was like, oh, today's gonna be a wonderful day. Like, these guys and girls gonna get ready to come in here and like really be eager to get this information that we have to offer. Um, and as we said at the table, I just watched everybody going around, man, just gathering information, man. It was exciting to see, captured a lot of pictures. A lot of individuals came to the table. Um, Seeking services, reaching out, other organizational leaders. It's always a good opportunity to network for the different organizations in the process. And iron sharpens iron. And in a lot of spaces, we act as liaisons anyway, directing clients to the proper services that they need. So to see a lot of our community partners in the room is always a good thing, and it's nice for for the ladies and gentlemen to have a one-stop shop, if you will. You can go to one corner of the room and get directions on this service. You can go down the line and get directions on another service. Then you can spin around the table and talk about getting your record expunged. Then you can come back to the other side and talk about eviction policies and laws. And so it was amazing. It was a great turnout. And I was glad to be a part of it. And anytime I'm eager to be a part. So anytime.
Thank you. Definitely appreciate it. Yeah, you said
So
it all in a nutshell. Yeah. We had
at
385 registered attendees. And I want to say
okay,
there was a total of 322 that actually came into the building.
that was about to be my
Um,
question. Mhm.
yeah. So I have not, I'm gonna be honest, it was today. I still got an Urban League shirt. So you know what I mean? It's just been one of those days where I've just been moving. So but I think it's 322. I haven't confirmed, but most definitely. We saw a number of individuals today. 51 were expungement ready,
Mhm.
from neighborhood Christian legal clinics, so they're able to go ahead and do that, at no cost, for people to be able to expunge their records. There is a process, but to say 51 out of 320, which means there are a lot of people who think that, ask about eligible record expungement, but they still have a pending case. And if you have a pending case, then you cannot, like, there are still certain things that make you eligible. So the fact that they were able to have 51 in one room at one time was really good. Um, we had kept asking the attendees. As of right now, unfortunately, we didn't do an attendee survey, but I had, you saw the team definitely asking attendees as they were leaving, if they had gotten everything that they needed. It was a 99.5% yes rate. Only one gentleman said, well, not necessarily, but we found out again it was the pending eligibility. But he was able to
Gotcha.
be introduced to our prosecutor, Ryan Mears. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, definitely, want to give a shout out to Ryan and Johnny Winstead, coming out saying that Marion County Prosecutor's Office definitely for sure everybody. So yeah, really good
So
time.
So, question when it comes to the expungement, because I've heard you use the word like eligibility requirements a couple times. The eligibility requirements, to your knowledge, what are some of those eligibility requirements and getting your record expunged? Because like coming from a space of incarceration, you hear so much, and it's hard to decipher like what's true, what's not true. Is do I fit into this, do I not? um Amongst a whole bunch of other things that you hear, like a lot of guys don't believe that they can vote um because of their felony conviction. So and that's a whole nother conversation. Maybe we'll dive into
We
that a
can,
little bit
yes.
too through this
Mhm,
conversation. But
mhm.
what are some of the eligibility requirements to getting your record expunged?
To be honest, I am not an expert, which is why I had the experts there today, right? But
Okay.
keep in mind, I'll speak to me specifically. I don't have enough time that has passed yet. And for the time limit, and that is an eligibility requirement. Again, if you do have so in Indiana, I know if you have anything that is pending, that's automatic no. And I wish I was on a computer right now because I could look up some data for you, but I'm gonna go based off what I definitely know.
Mhm.
Um, Others, it depends on the type, depending on what state, depends on if you're habitual. One of the things that I'm seeing a lot of times that I'm getting nervous for our people is because a lot of people are getting that serious violent felon with a handgun
Mhm.
charge that, and they're not necessarily actually serious violent felons. Um, but I guess because of the I'm noticing a trend with that. It's kinda trying to figure out how to say it in a way that's diplomatically correct. There are certain convictions that I believe that you cannot expunge if or seal if they are a certain violent in nature or a certain amount of times that you've done it. So again, if you're habitual, I want to say it's just kind of what it is and you can't do it. But then again, I never want to say that something can't be done because I've seen all kinds of stuff. I've seen people get denied for something that happened 20 years ago and we don't know why. But that's why we were able to make those connections, especially over the last few months, especially me and my role. Again, I'm new back in my role. So just came back to Urban League in February 2025 and, reconnecting and getting with the team, knowing their current connections in the community. And like you said, having a one-stop shop. Um, being collaborative partners is really what's going to take, to get our community where it needs to be. Everybody, can offer something to the table in a holistic approach, which,
Mhm.
like I said, the whoever hint hint if they're going to be voting for prosecutor and all of that, well, maybe you need to start finding out about these serious violent felon handgun um convictions, because if it's becoming that people are violent and they're unable to expunge it after a certain amount of time, or they're unable to get jobs because people think they're violent without knowing the circumstances. It may be needed to word this differently, especially in a state that has, open carry, right? You can have to have a permit anymore. Now, I know that
Right.
if you are convicted, you should not be carrying a firearm, and that's not what I'm saying, but obviously, we're in sometimes where people do feel the need to have protection. Um,
Right.
and that's just kind of what it is. It can be scary in the world. But for those who have that serious violent felon, 99% of the time, I'm finding out that they are not discharging the weapon. They're not brandishing it even half the time. It's just on their person, and they happen to
Mhm.
be somebody who is, has been convicted of a felony prior. So then they get a serious violent felon, you know, conviction or charge, and it really, really becomes very hindering. So hopefully we can bring that to the forefront and start doing a lot more research on some of the disparities that are, kind of happening right underneath our noses.
Mhm.
And that's why having collaborative partners, especially being able to channel different resources, for people to be able to get information. Prior to the event, I was getting emails from people asking about specific, well, I can't pay this bill, I can't do that. And again, no one, from what I understand, my team deals with that, but no one was asking for that. Everybody, again, was saying that they got what they needed because they're in that room. There was someone who was able to provide it.
Right.
With the new administration, that's been in, there have been funding cuts everywhere, especially for programs that are targeted for African Americans and disadvantaged individuals. Um, and other minorities, just in all kinds of qualms and fashions. But with different funding cuts and different methods on how, people want to run the country. I guess we just have to be adaptive, like we usually are, and figure out ways that we can, still persevere. So yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with all the, you know, all of the services that you guys provide at the Indianapolis Urban League, for those who aren't familiar, can you share what the mission of the Indianapolis Urban League is and how it entry and economic empowerment?
I would do a disservice to the Urban League if only it was to describe the things that the Indianapolis or Urban League does. I'll just rattle off, a few of the different things. Um, by first starting to tell you about our departments. Our mission, again, um, African Americans, disadvantaged other minorities and disadvantaged individuals. So I'm not saying we're not talking about race. We're talking about those who are African American, other minorities, and disadvantaged individuals.
Mhm.
whatever, that may be. So we are a catch-all. We can try to assist almost within, at least within Marion County, but around surrounding areas. For those who are trying to enter back into the workforce, those who are trying to find a computer class, those who are looking for free training. That can range anywhere from HVAC to CDL to drone pilot training to microdermablation. I mean, there's 30 different trainings. I'm not doing it, service. Um, we have even health and wellness from vaccinations to flu, free flu that they were giving out. They have weekly exercise sessions that are given out free. Where they bring a young lady in, her name is Tylisha, and oh my gosh, I cannot remember the name of her fitness, Toot Your Glutes. But it's every Tuesday. Sorry. It's every Tuesday, free to the public. There are cooking demonstrations. We do a monthly food distribution where we assist 500, packages of, food go out every month. We also have a pantry. We have an education department that deals with our youth. Project Ready is the name of the program. It is in various schools in Indianapolis, trying to make sure that they're ready for the career path, whether it's military, whether it's a job, whether it's owning your own business, entrepreneurship. We have entrepreneurship cohorts under a lady named Camila James. She is awesome. Um, my team is family services. My team has programming for veterans, seniors, the 18 to 24-year-olds, reentry. That's part of where we, intersect with other types of organizations. Um, and then our rapid rehousing that we deal with the city. Um, in the coordinated entry space, with other organizations like Damien Center and Chip and Ardor, I mean, the list kind of goes on. Um, but when it comes to reentry, um, Indianapolis Urban League has been an equal opportunity employer. Yes, they do background checks, but your background will not affect you from ever getting employment with us. Again, by them giving me just a start to being a customer call center contractor person, trainer, right? They help develop someone who had thought that because of my background that I would not be able to do certain things. And I've been able to break those things down with ease. It was so funny, Jamarcus. Remember I was telling you about how all these customer service jobs were turning me down, like Lowe's call center, right? They turned me down. It was a raise trash. Oh no, recycle something. Anyway, after they turned me down and I got the job with Urban League, not even 8 months later, I was walking past the call floor where I would have been sitting to their top offices to talk about our job readiness programs. So just to think
Mhm.
where, the limit, just to realize that, oh, there's no limit to this. And people like to say the sky's the limit, but obviously I guess that we're going to space now. So I mean, just if you really want to be able to not have your background necessarily be all of you. A lot of times, anytime people who have backgrounds, I would have to say that was the hardest thing it was to talk about in my life for a while because I couldn't understand how to get it out. Um, Finally being able to tell the story with, you know, understanding of the journey that it took for me to get to be, on a podcast with Jamarcus Fields. Incarceration was a part of that process. I look back on it and it made me appreciate the little things that I don't think that a lot of people take for granted. Um, which is why, even the little things like just being able to go outside, sit in your car, drive or hug, a loved one, anything of that, right? So, yeah.
Mhm.
So I think I went off on a tangent, but Urban League does so much more financial literacy. I mean, the list kind of, like I said, goes on. We try to
Yes, it
impact
does.
our community in so many different ways that, like I said, I'm not even doing it a service by talking about it right now. Probably if you hadn't got me after the resource fair today, I probably have a little bit more brain power. But boy, but yeah.
Uh, it's all good. You're doing good. So how does systemic inequality impact individuals returning home from incarceration, particularly in urban communities?
Well, we're already at a
And
disservice by our zip codes. That's just number one. But
Mhm.
um a lot of times there are so many layers to systemic, barriers that have been kind of put in place. But um for those that I would say recently coming home versus maybe coming home 10 years ago, um the landscape has changed where technology, I'm gonna be honest with you, has done a wonderful thing, but also done a disservice to those who have not, yet understood it. There are
Mhm.
literacy issues that are, affecting things. There are technology issues that when you're plopped into society, if you're unable to do the basic things in order for society to think that you are to exist, you're already done at a disservice. And then again, in certain areas where, they don't have the best food options, they have the lowest income, um, well, you have some of the hardest working people, right? Which is just baffling to me. How you have some of the hardest
Right.
working people who are in a lot of these zip codes that are overlooked. As you see, even with redistricting recently, they're trying to redraw the line to make it so that it can be managed, to
Yeah.
say. I will say this, being at the Indiana Fiscal Policy Institute earlier this year and also the Politics and Pancakes with Indy Chamber, it was clear that there is a want. Because you know how Indianapolis is a nice little blue dot. And I think with gentrification efforts, and they were trying to build from within out, but we were told, what was that, February, March of last year, that they decided not to do that and decided to build from outside in. So a lot of these things are going to trickle down from outside areas if we are not, very careful. A lot of other
Right.
barriers we have in our communities, a distrust of law enforcement, a distrust of medical systems. Those are, I mean, people don't want to take their medicine because it makes them feel a certain way, but if they don't take it, then they can't keep a job because they can't focus or they're going off on people because they haven't processed their feelings due to mental trauma. So again, when you say systemic barriers, a lot of times those who are not in our shoes or work in this work don't understand it. And if they don't
Right.
understand it, they can't make comments on it. And because there's just so many to name, um, it's like that's why I was like, wherever I think that's why I love the not just Urban League, there are so many other organizations, but I have a personal affinity, of course. But we have staff that genuinely cares about making sure that you can be as the best whatever it is, that you can be. Um,
Right.
and has a real deep want to make, our entire community thrive. People don't realize that the better your community thrives, the less crime you have, the less substance use. When people are feeling better, they tend not to use substances as much. I'm not gonna say they don't, but I'm just gonna say as much, because they're not trying to heal from something. We also have another systemic barrier of I think what happens is people are told or taught, "Don't go to the therapist. Don't go get therapy." We don't do that. Well, we should, right? We should.
We sure
Being able to
should.
yeah, being able to get it out and communicate definitely makes me a completely different person than I was, 10 years ago. Um, but, at the end of the day, Indianapolis Urban League has always had a, mission to serve the community, make sure the community is fed, try to gain new partnerships, try to find funding, donations. We love it all. In-kind donations. Look, you want to donate us a
Right.
bus, right? I'll put it to use. We're about to start with the
Right.
streets to home, with the unhoused population. Housing is
Right.
such near and dear to my heart. And Jamarcus, I know I just keep talking, but you said systemic barriers, and it's just what it
This
is. To be able to find
what you gonna give us?
okay. Housing is one of the biggest things that is so dear to my heart, and reentry has a space in it as well. But housing is hard for everybody right now. Let's not, get that misunderstood.
Right.
But a lot of people don't realize being out in the elements has its own kind of issue. Um, Whereas why there's always a need to want to make sure that those who are unable to be able to house themselves, even imminent risk of eviction, evicted, homeless, living in a car, living on the street, you can't focus if you are not comfortable, right?
Right.
So that is, I wish that I had, and people always say safe, affordable, quality housing. I wish I could say I had safe, affordable, quality housing, at my fingertips. Um, Housing is one of the things that and I've seen especially with those who have convictions, if the landlord knows you're either A, not getting in, or B, they're gonna they're gonna extort you and have extra deposits, like triple deposits or extra money on the rent every month because you have convictions. Um,
Mhm.
I asked and anyway, I don't even want to get into that. That's another story for another day. We only have 1 hour. So housing, and then some people are just they're used to being outside, and I'm not talking about those that are comfortable being outside. What I'm saying is those who again are at risk of eviction, have been evicted, want to get back into or want to be in stable housing. I ask that you try to go to the access sites, which is the keys to housing flyer. That can be found, I want to say, on CHIP's website, which is the Coalition for Homelessness Intervention Prevention. Um, But again, housing is so dear and near to my heart because even me, having to live with people, when you can't get in, somewhere, or certain people who are on probation can't live with certain people because they have certain lifestyles or they live in certain districts. No one's talking about those who have sexual offenses, and it's unfortunate because those individuals get a stigma as well. Again, I'm not saying what's right or what's wrong. What I'm saying is I get stories where well, not even stories because it's real life individuals that, maybe he was 20 and she 19 and then there be a spat and then he, have to go to jail and now has an offense, never been in trouble before, and now has to be on the registry. And that itself is so limiting. And again, another barrier, a
Right.
larger stigma, a stronger target on your back for people to also think because you have a sexual offense means that you are a sexual predator and you're going to try to, do everything. And that's not what that means. So a lot of people are just not educated on the varying levels, of what offenses mean. Level A, felony 6, whatever, C felony. Like people don't understand those things. And they also don't know. both sides of the story or what, things actually go through. So I just hope people have an open mind when people hear someone who is, that has criminal convictions, and at least tries to give that person a chance on what they did now. Because again, that organization, Indianapolis Urban League, gave me a chance to be able to do so much that I thought was impossible due to having a background.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for touching on, both the mental health piece, and being okay, talking to someone, regardless of what the stigmas in our communities, say, because that's one of the key areas of focus with Iron Sharpens Iron is mental health. And making sure that, individuals have safe places to outlet, to talk about things, um, accountability partners, the whole nine, just so that we can stay healthy and be the best version of ourselves. Because if not, then how do we service other individuals if we're still broken? So we're big on taking care of yourself so that you can then be of help and service to someone else. And the housing situation, as you said, it's not just returning citizens. Like there is a housing crisis in our country that is impacting everybody. And, with the returning citizen population, when you look at just the raw numbers and you dig into the data, like if housing and employment are taken care of, we almost eradicate recidivism. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
and of course,
you
we're
got a
not
really good
talking
chance
about
of not
too
coming back.
small.
Yeah. Mhm.
Right. And of course, we're not talking about two small things like employment and housing are big, um, like across the board. Again, not just for returning citizens, but, those have been two long-standing things that and you mentioned it, if you don't know where you're laying your head and you're not comfortable and peaceful, how are you supposed to focus at work? You know what I mean? And I feel like they go hand in hand, and that's why there's such big issues. I don't know how we fix that. That's why I continue to have these conversations, so we can, collectively start finding avenues to where we can start working on some of this stuff, because like our futures and our communities depend on it.
Listen to me. The the what gets me is there are so many buildings, vacant houses, apart there's so many open things. Apartments, rents. I know these things have skyrocketed due, to other things, but even if we started doing things such as I would I would have loved to, and this is just an example, something that could be done. Because people were talking about, well, we have these things, but who's going to repair that? Well, we got a whole lot of training opportunities, right? Where why can't we start to do some kind of training program that would actually help renovate and build your house? I know there's certain things like Habitat for Humanity and certain other things that people do, but if we can start doing that within our own communities, that would definitely be very helpful. I know people are like on this tiny house thing, um, but there are just so many structures, that some do, that are condemned that need to be torn down. Um, but it's like we always have all this construction going on, for new things, and if nobody's able to afford them, then they're just gonna be old, empty, abandoned places. How many times do you see on TikTok where there's these abandoned mansions, right, with just all this stuff in it, and it's just like it's such a waste. Whereas these could be places that are turned into, you know, shared housing units that are, and what I mean by shared housing is you either have your own like separate wing and you have a common area, like you don't share a room. I do need to
Right.
say that really quick because, and I know I kind of get off on a tangent. I know, but the thing that people are is bothering me, Jamarcus, and I know we talk about solutions, but this is something that's bothering me, is I'm seeing a lot of I'm not gonna say organizations, but businesses that are charging per bed, like they kinda do like in rehab, and they wanna charge, like 750 per bed and then put like 4 beds in a room and have a four-bedroom house and not think about the 16 attitudes that come with that and the trash cans that you need and the extra refrigerator that you might need and the schedule of chores. I'm like, y'all are not thinking like this through, but you're also charging 750 per bed, which means you're getting $3,000 a room per room, you know, for people to
Hmm.
be packed like sardines. So again, there's so much vacant space. There's been a lot of talk with our elected officials, which those are individuals who could help or at least navigate, in the direction of trying to actually solve or try to have a better resolution for the affordability and the housing crisis that we have at least within Marion County and surrounding areas. Um, there's always, like I said, a lot of new construction. Apartments are right above the threshold. So even with some, what is it, Marion County Reentry MCRC,
Hmm.
Marion County Reentry Coalition.
Yeah.
There's programs like with the leasing program, master leasing, where they, would assist with up to 12 months while this person can get on their feet. Even having transitional housing buildings where there is a model like that, but it needs to be opened up a little more on scale, and unfortunately, really needs to be a little more monitored. But
Hmm.
it really could be a segue, very similar to how iron sharpens iron. I remember you told me that the house, that's still within, you guys. I think you guys passed it down. Like you were able to get a house, Jamarcus. Is
Yeah.
that sorry? No, yeah,
Yeah, when I
but
was at work release and we found somebody that would actually rent to felons. And so
yes,
we just kept recycling and passing it down to the next person being released just so we could keep it in the community.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. That's why I'm like, we have solutions, in our communities that are on a smaller scale. But if we're able to actually get together and really have those who are running our city, to help us, then yes. And I guess the reason why I bring that up is because, we were going to talk about voting. So yeah, but I'm gonna wait until we get there because I know we're not there yet. But I just want to throw that out there. But that's I mean, I think that's a good start. Nothing is permanent and there's no true solution. There, like I said, we have programs that are in place that are on smaller scale. Streets to Home is trying to do and we are partnered with that as well. So, it's Urban League is, and there's a want to make sure that people are, able to thrive, especially with the bill that's been passed. I believe they passed it. They may not have, so don't quote me on this. But
Mm.
the criminalization of homelessness, I don't know if
Isn't
that's
completely past it.
yes. Thank you. Like I guess I just kind of tuned it out. But from what I understand, even with that, it's not an immediate arrest as people were thinking.
Hmm.
There's I guess when you're reprimanded, you have 24 to 48 hours to move from where you were, and if you're
Yeah.
still there, then you can be charged with a Class C misdemeanor. Now that does not help matters if you are found and they do give you a Class C misdemeanor, but at least it's not just an immediate on site, kind of thing. So if we can educate people, and try to start figuring out what resources are available and what can be available, um, on those in those short term moments, then hopefully we can. But I know people are sleeping in their cars, especially in parking lots, all of that. They'll definitely
Right.
have to find other places to go. And it's sad because we have I call it a working homeless population where people are going to work every day. Um, but they're, washing up at truck stops because they're sleeping in their cars at rest areas.
Yeah.
And they're going to work every single day, but just cannot afford, that amount of rent. So yeah.
Yeah. Just trying to get over the hump. Um, so
Mhm.
yeah, I definitely get it. Do you so first let me tap into the chat real quick. Um, our sister said, unfortunately, there's a stigma attached to the RSOs, and the community is not willing to hear the truth. Um, and I think that came out when when you were talking about the enlightening of what these things actually mean. You just hear sex offender or you hear sex offense, and then people just shut down and they start shooting red darts at you without actually knowing the detail. And that's again, it goes back to that stigma. Like, we are such a stigma heavy community that it's just certain things that they just very unforgiving of. And don't get me wrong, some instances I get it, but like we never do any good generalizing things, because there's there's levels to everything, including that. You know what I mean? You gave an example of the 20 and 19-year-old, and I know those same kind of examples. I know guys that I grew up with, that I was on the football team with, that, happened to graduate. And the crazy thing is, when he graduated and his girl was still at high school, like, they were already a couple before he
Mhm.
even got to that point. So
Yes,
I know
exactly.
situations like that. I know guys that are actually on the sex offender registry, and I know their situation. And I know that they got a raw deal out of it, but me knowing that versus what's on their packet when they try to go and get housing or try to, do whatever it is that they do, doesn't help. So yeah, it's unfortunate that we so stuck on stigmas like that. And as sister said, a lot of individuals in the community just aren't willing to hear the truth when it comes to that. And then she also said, great work in the community, Jamarcus and B, and that Gimme Life provides single rooms and very affordable. And I
Thank
I
you.
can concur, knowing knowing their organization, Give Me Life, and what they do in the housing space. Like,
Yes.
they're a rare bird.
Yes, Miss
um,
Unique Webster, shout out.
Yes, absolutely. They are a rare bird, and we'll hear more about that as the season goes on here on the podcast at some point. But yeah, I just wanted to highlight the comments that she gave, and anybody know having a loved one, or if you yourself is on this call and have some questions, make sure y'all reach out to Give Me Life, and see if they can give you some life. So
Exactly.
let me ask a question before we tackle the voting question, which I think is something we definitely have to touch on um, within our communities and for the timing of it. We got some elections, around the corner, and people already starting to bid for their spots, but at the Urban League, do you guys do any kind of like workforce development or career training programs for guys coming home? Because we talk about that employment and like just getting, but may not necessarily have the direction or had the opportunity to get some career training. Do you guys offer that through any of your services?
Absolutely. The and I know everybody has a new beginnings. So I want to differentiate. It is the Indianapolis Urban League in their workforce development department. There is a 2-week job readiness, um, workforce development, job readiness course. It is 9 to 1, Monday through Friday for 2 weeks. They do a lunch, but in it they go over resumes, mock interviews. There's speed interviews where employers are invited in. to come, and it's like a speed dating format where you get to, talk to each employer individually. Um,
Mhm.
they want to, again, that was a program that I even went through. I learned so much in it, and I thought that I knew quite a bit, from having, education, prior to, and, kind of thinking I know resumes, but even learning, more information about how to talk about yourself, how to discuss convictions, how to, um, talk about that time frame on your resume so it makes sense, because a lot of people don't think that you can count the experience that you have while incarcerated as jobs. I'm like, "What?" Yes, I was like, I was the first ship preparation lead for, in kitchen prep. I did this, I did
Right.
that. I'm like, you no different than being at a restaurant. I'm like, there's the great part about it, again, that particular program, to get to any kind of like our free training and all of that, you would have to go through the workforce development side. But there's I will say this, and I hate to say this, but that's the thing. We are unable now, it's not that we are having a stigma against those who have sexual offenses, because the Indianapolis Urban League has a lot of various programming that has children on site and present just about almost every day. We cannot have
Okay.
those who have sexual offenses in our building, which then renders me unable, especially with my funding, to be able to assist those who have convictions that, of a sexual nature. So I do
Right.
refer those individuals to PACE, because that's really the only place that I know that, other than Office of Public Health and Safety, those are the two places, that I know offhand that will be able to at least try to help. Um,
Mhm.
but sorry, I lost my train of thought. There's so much going on with our poor babies. But yeah, we can't do registered sex offenders at Urban League, or or those who are serious violent in nature, right? Because violent, that's part of the thing. Now what means violent to someone else may not necessarily mean violent to me, but if you're on a registry, that's something one thing. But again, if you come to me and you say, I never discharged my weapon, right? And I'm just the example I gave earlier. I never discharged my weapon. I'm a serious violent felon. I didn't hit anybody with it. I didn't pistol whip anybody. I didn't draw it on anybody, any of these things. And they're getting this charge. I'm not gonna say you can't come through my program. What I am gonna say is, please, well, our program, that's not even my program, but that's our program. Um, what I will say is, come through the program, do the job readiness course. There is a process to everything, but again, there are career pathways, there are networking opportunities, there are opportunities for entrepreneurship, there are pathways to almost anything you can think of. Um, but I can't necessarily guarantee that I can get a job that you will want to do. I can get you one. Don't do that, because when I got out, I picked up dog poop for what, $8.50 an hour? So, not to say,
Right.
and that's not everybody, but I needed a job. If you're okay and you don't have to do something to make some money, then great. I knew fast food wasn't for me, so working with animals was, right? So I would say get into something that you, for those who are needing a job and wanting to work, think outside the box for those things that are not customary, right? Now you issue gonna work like a dog, but it was a means to an end to get to where I needed to go. Also allowed me to grow professionally, because, again, being incarcerated also has another layer of it. Warehouse work is not fun. I did it myself. It wasn't my thing. It's completely
Right.
understanding. But again, there's certain things that if you're willing to do it, some people can go work in the tomato plant. Some people can go work at what's that, Americold, right? In the freezer. Now, again, it may not be something you necessarily want to do, but at least get to where you want to be. Get a credential, some education. And I know I hate to say it, but in some ways, education does matter. And I know I'm trying to get there. I'm just trying to wrap it up. But education does matter in some instances, but so does life experience. Look for those
Right.
roles that life experience is, something that is required for the job, right? Because
Mhm.
who can tell you better than something when you've already been there yourself? So, yeah.
Ab- Absolutely. Um, okay, before we get ready, so we're going to wrap up with the voting conversation. But before that, Darvis Clay mentioned in the chat, Love All Independent Living in Anderson also provides a safe, affordable place to live with mental health recovery and post incarceration workshops. Um, yeah,
Yes.
the Harvest Film got a wonderful thing that they've started down there in Anderson to help with the dishoused population down there. And they doing good stuff down there. So if anybody in the Anderson area is in need of those services, Darvis, if you could tap into the chat and let them know how to get in touch with y'all as well as how to refer. And I asked the refer question because I see Sharon asked how does he refer someone to give me life. Um, so I'm going to
Is she is
assume
she
that
on here?
she was. I was waiting to see if she had answered that, but I can go ahead and tell you, you can tap into them at their website, which is GML at give me. The E in me is the number three lifeboardinghome.com. GML at give me life boardinghome.com. And the E in me is the number three. So talk to us about this voting thing. As I mentioned earlier, I remember while I was doing time, there was a lot of myths, if you will, that were mentioned that had everybody just in an uproar. One of them was that our right to vote had been lost forever, that, we wouldn't be able to vote. And I remember personally, it put me in a place where, like, I ain't care nothing about the election. I didn't care who became president. I stopped following the stuff because I'm like, if I can't do nothing to have some sort of impact on that, then I just gotta hope people get it right and just ride out. But to get out and realize that I actually can vote and that I had been misled all those years. For one, I was angered, but I was also exhilarated. Like I couldn't wait to go down there and get registered to vote and go vote, get my pen, my sticker, and everything. I just voted. Like I was hype about those moments because I came from a place where I never thought I would be able to do that. And before I
Mhm.
went to prison, I had never voted. So
Mhm.
my first time voting in life was post incarceration at the age of 44. But I walked in there like an 18-year-old, just as happy with a big old smile on my face to vote. And you hear a bunch of other things like, with a felony, you can't get a passport, so you'll never be able to leave the country. Another myth. So talk to us about this voting as we have just yesterday, before the rain hit, it was nice outside. I had some people that are running for Congress seats, walking the housing edition and walking around the neighborhood, pitching their stuff. So let's end with this conversation about voting as the timely because of the timeliness of it, if nothing else.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna try to summarize, because I can be long winded. So so I'm gonna try to touch on everything that you said in a roundabout and very quickly.
Okay.
Voting is gonna depend on what state you're in, but in Indiana, you can pretty much almost vote as soon as you get out. Okay.
Okay.
Then on top of that, many people think in a presidential election, which I am going to say that is probably the election that you are right, where your vote probably doesn't really count as much as you think it should, because there's
Right.
electoral votes, there's a big layer process. People forget that there are other branches besides the president. We vote for judges, prosecutors, mayors, city council. Those are the people that fix your roads. Well, not fix them personally, of course, but decide to allot the funding to do so.
Mhm.
Um, They get to decide whether the school board, for example, gets to decide whether what kind of lunch your kids are gonna have. Um, there is a gentleman that has a video called "My Vote Don't Count" or "Vote Don't Count" or something. It's by Yellow Pain, and when I tell you, he broke it down in so wonderful form of fashion about judicial, legislative, and executive branches of government, because you vote for judges, so these sentences people are getting, these longer times people are getting, these are the elections that actually matter. These are the ones that actually count. The ones that are in the 2-year elections that nobody shows up for. Attendance
Mhm.
is so low that people run unopposed. People don't even know what's going on. And you know what? They're campaigning for it right now. Your next mayor is already campaigning for it. So in what is that, 2027? Next year?
Yeah.
Our prosecutor. I love right mayors. This is the thing. The prosecutor. And I'm not I'm gonna say it this way. And I know I think we're over time. But think about it this way. I'm not here to sway you to vote for anybody. What I'm here to say is please do your research on what it is. We do research on the hair products, we do research on, what our birthday party is gonna be like. We do research on resorts, we do research on TikTok. We can research who the people that are running our city who are who can help us with this affordable housing crisis.
Mhm.
Those are the 2-year people that people forget about, that people don't go vote for. It's a big distraction just to go look for the president, because that is rigged on its own, in a sense that that's neither here nor there. It's not another. But the people that were walking through our eviction and expungement resource fair today,
Yeah.
was that the sheriff? Is that a voting one? I mean, either way,
It is.
again, what I'm saying is a lot of times people don't recognize that they have the power to change things and have been led astray. They've been told the wrong thing so long that they believe it. And do your own research, find out for yourself, and don't give up. I've been told no. We've been told no and rejected so many times.
Right.
So I think that is one of the things that people like us do have. We have a resilience. We're gonna do our best to, again, persevere. So vote in the 2-year elections, people, please. There's one this year, November. Please turn out. Go look at who's gonna be coming out. I think they're gonna start announcing in May who's gonna be on the ballot. I think in April there's an election there. Again, people don't know about it. They're not paying attention to any of the things that go on at the state level or the local level. They're too busy worried about the president. That's It's a distraction. That's all I'm gonna say.
Right. All righty. Well, I
All right.
thank you for joining us tonight. Nah, you good. For joining us tonight and just sharing a lot of what the Indianapolis Urban League does, services that they provide, their mission. Um, Great conversations on housing. Gave Love All, Independent, and Gimme Life the opportunity to provide some housing resources to some of the callers that are on here. Um, yeah, so great conversation. I appreciate you, and I know it's been a long day. Um, it's probably been a long week for you. I know it's definitely been a long day for us. We kind
Yeah.
of been together all day. Um, but
Yeah.
again,
It's
thank
been
you.
fun though. It's been fun day.
And,
Yeah.
and thank you everybody that tuned in. As we wrap up tonight's conversation, I hope this episode reminded you that reentry is about more than just second chances. It's about real opportunities. When organizations, communities, and leaders work together, we create pathways that allow people not just to come home, but to move forward. If you want to learn more about the work we're doing or how to get involved, visit us at Iron Sharpens Iron, WAST.org, where you can find all things Iron Sharpens Iron. You can see our events that we have coming up, different ways to get involved, volunteering your services, becoming an Ironman. becoming a board member to help move the mission and the vision of Iron Sharpens Iron forward. And if you feel led to donate, we all know that in this space, nothing moves without finances. So, we're always looking for ways to be able to fuel that mission. You can do all of that at the website on through our donation page. And until next time, keep elevating, keep illuminating, and keep building communities where restoration is possible. Everybody have a good evening and see you again next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we elevate and illuminate. Good night, everybody.